But let's talk about our own budgetary problems here. 3.8 billion in an adjustment, a far smaller figure compared to what you were talking about with Italian debt, but significant enough for the Irish economy. The process at which details are being leaked and given to us, Cliff, I mean, we had hoped for some certainty after Friday. Don't think we have much, do we?
Not really, I suppose. Up to a few years ago, there had been kind of a big unveiling on budget day of all the details of what was going to happen over the next year. We're going to see now a multi-stage process this year. We saw the first stage on Friday, in which the government published its overall numbers, its overall forecast for the next 3 or 4 years. Now, I suppose for the analysts, that gave them something to put into their spreadsheets, some numbers to crunch. But in terms of what it's actually going to mean for people on the ground, we didn't hear an awful amount. So we're still in the land of supposition. Although we do have something to go on, because the government has set down a program with the EU and the IMF, and there are things, specific commitments in that I think give us some important pointers about what's going to be in the budget itself. I
mean, the lower predicted growth forecast, that means that they're already tempering our expectations about what's going to happen next year, aren't they?
Yeah, we've a plus and a minus, I suppose, in terms of the overall figures. The minus is that economic growth is going to be lower. And really the problem there is the international economy, particularly the European economy. Growth is slower. It's going to make it harder for our exporters. And our exporters are the only real thing that has been driving growth in the economy over the last couple of years. So we're going to see lower growth. That's going to mean lower tax revenue. The plus, I suppose, is that we did get a lower interest rate from the EU a couple of months ago as part of the deal to bail out Greece. They agreed to give us a lower interest rate as well. And I suppose it's worth noting in passing that had we not got that agreement, we would be looking at an adjustment of somewhere 4.5 billion or more, which would be a lot more painful. So at least that's helped.
You mentioned the fact that analysts would be able to put some figures into a spreadsheet. What the normal punter can't do is work out how worse off they're going to be after budget day. We know the difference between taxes and cuts. The government has set that out. The key issue here, Cliff, is that what's coming down the line for your average person is it's death by 1,000 cuts, because they're going to see maybe their children's allowance cut, the school bus fee we see today, that could go up. There could be a change in the tax band that takes another couple of €100 out of your pocket. There's going to be no one big thing, but lots of small things.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's two things. There's two ways that this budget's going to affect people. One is that government department budgets are going to be cut. So departments like the Department of Education, for example, are going to have less money to spend. And you're going to see a lot of speculation that that's going to lead to extra charges for school buses, maybe extra charges for hospital visits. Anywhere where government departments can claw back a bit of money from you, they're going to have to try and do it over the next couple of years. So that is going to hit people. The other area is the other side of the budget, taxes and charges. I suppose we've a little more idea what might happen and how that might affect people's pocket. In terms of the overall amount of money that the government is going to look to raise in additional taxes next year, it works out at about €600 per household compared to this year. So it's a significant enough sum, and it's going to come, I think, as you say, across the board. We're promised no big income tax increases, but the price of not having a big income tax increase is we're going to have lots of little tax increases elsewhere. So VAT is going to go up. Capital taxes are probably going to be adjusted so that people will pay more on inheritances and on gifts. Excise duties are going to go up. Carbon tax is going to go up, so that means the price of fuel is going to go up again. So we are going to be hit in 7 or 8 different ways, unfortunately, in this budget. It may not be as bad as last year's, but it's not going to be too pleasant either.
Would the government not be better off just coming out and saying, this is the amount we need to raise from every household, that's the figure, this is what you're going to have to contribute, rather than doing it in this way that's just going to annoy people?
Yeah, I suppose the difficulty for the government is trying to balance its pre-election commitments with the reality of having to raise a lot of money. And the big commitment it made before the election was, look, there'll be no further increases in income tax. And I think it's struggling hard to keep to that commitment, because normally when governments want to raise a big whack of money, income tax is the easiest and quickest way to do it. You just, whack an extra % on or introduce a new charge, as was done with the universal social charge, and you raise a lot of money very quickly. Now, the government has said that it doesn't want to do that next year, so it's having to look at a lot of different areas. One of the things, I suppose, that is going to cause a lot of angst, a lot of debate is the new household charge.
And this is
which
the precursor
is the
to the
property tax.
Yeah, this is the precursor to the property tax, really. This is just dressing it up by calling it a household charge.
Yeah, and it's going to be, the indications are, unless things change, that it's going to be €100 per household next year. It's likely to increase fairly significantly in subsequent years. And in subsequent years also, as the house valuation process is finished, what it's going to mean is that people in bigger, more expensive houses are going to pay more than people in smaller, cheaper houses. We've yet to see exactly how that's going to play out. We're also going to face water charges. That's not coming. Won't come next year, but it's going to come in one of the subsequent years. So I think that where people will notice it next year is VAT, a VAT increase, capital taxes, excise duties, higher fuel costs, and I think they're also going to see a lot of tax reliefs, which people have benefited for. I think a lot of those are being looked at very seriously. So, for example, there could be a significant cut in pension relief, which would mean that higher earners will pay a fairly significant extra whack of tax, depending on how exactly that is introduced.
On the issue of VAT, this talk that the top rate's going to go up to 23%, and a lot of discussion about whether the reduction that was brought in to try and boost tourism and so on, whether that was effective and whether it's going to be reversed. How much money could they make off changes in VAT?
They could make several hundred million from increasing the top rate each percentage point. So it is a big earner, all right. The controversial point, I suppose, about increasing VAT is that it tends to hit the less well-off households more, so that proportionately more of a hit is taken by less well-off households than better-off households who are, I suppose, better able to afford the VAT increase. But nonetheless, I think it's coming, and I think higher excise taxes are also going to push up the cost of shopping. Quite possibly the cost of fuel is going to rise as well. So we are going to be paying more for the goods we buy. It is going to be a big way that the government's going to look at to raise taxes next year.
So Cliff, it's the whole point is that it is going to be this death by 1,000 cuts almost, isn't it? And the government isn't going to be able to dress this up in any way or tell us that they're acting on all our collective behalves for the greater good. It's going to hurt, and the sooner they need to be honest about that, the better.
Yeah, I think so. And I suppose there's politics versus economics here. The economic view would be, look, it's better to tell people what's going to happen not only this year but over the next couple of years, so that, okay, we know it's set down. It may not be pleasant, but at least we know where we're going, and we can come to terms with it, and maybe it won't be quite as bad as people fear. But of course, the politics of it is different. It's going to be difficult enough for the government to tell people what they're going to do this year, and they're going to feel that if they spell out the next couple of years, they're going to get even more. They're going to get hit over the head even more. So a difficult balance there. But I do think we're going to see some clarity about what's going to happen over the next few years, because the EU and the IMF are pushing the government very firmly in that direction.